Hello, my name is GIB BEAVER CUTONE, and I'd like to share with you something that happened to me, and perhaps you can learn from it. I know I sure did. Because of what happened, I'm making this video for others to view and hopefully prevent something like this from happening to them. In January of 2014, I was close to being out of my 90-day proficiency in a tailwheel aircraft, and I decided to go flying. It was a fairly warm day, and there was a de Havilland Beaver airplane inside of a warm hangar, which is great in Fairbanks, Alaska in the winter. The de Havilland Beaver, which I was going to fly, is one that I've flown many hours in. I feel very comfortable in flying in it, and I try to maintain a very high level of proficiency. We have a policy of always filling the main tanks after each use. There are 3 of them in front, center, and a rear. The front and center each hold 35 gallons, and the rear holds 25 gallons. There are also wingtip tanks, but we do not normally fill them unless we're going on an extended flight. One of the reasons why we fill the tanks full is due to the possibility of condensation occurring. This is something every student pilot is taught, and we always fill them up after flying. Every time I've flown the Beaver, the tanks have been full, and I fill them when I bring the airplane back for the next person. When I decided to go flying, I asked another pilot who's not rated to fly the DHC-2 to go with me as a co-pilot. This was to provide an opportunity for both of us to obtain some CRM, cockpit resource management, utilizing the help of another person. I proceeded with a pre-flight, inspecting the airplane according to the checklist, which included checking all the fuel tank level and draining all 4 of the sumps on the belly of the airplane for contamination. The airplane was inside of a nice warm hangar, so I did not hurry, but took my time and did a thorough job. Once the pre-flight was complete and I had received approval to fly, we moved the airplane from the hangar and started it up. The checklist procedure calls for starting the engine and warming it up on the front tank, taxiing on the center tank, and run up and take off on the rear tank. As fuel is burned off, then the center tank is selected, followed by the front tank. I followed this procedure, and it is one that we use when we do not have fuel in the wingtip tanks. The 3 fuel gauges in the Beaver are down low in the center console of the airplane, and they are stacked in sort of a triangle, and they are fairly small. There are no fuel gauges for the wingtip tanks. The front tank gauge is on the left, and the rear tank is on top, and the center is on the right side of the triangle. Included in the fuel system is a wobble pump to put fuel pressure in the system for starting, and a red low pressure fuel light in front of the pilot. The low pressure light goes on when the fuel pressure drops and gives the pilot 3 to 5 seconds warning as the 450 horsepower motor consumes fuel. When this light goes on, it is a warning to immediately switch tanks. After run-up, we received clearance to take off for a closed pattern work. I completed the pre-takeoff briefing. Takeoff was uneventful. We were flying. And on downwind, the pre-landing checklist was completed, and a smooth, successful landing was completed. The same thing happened on the second takeoff. Uneventful, followed by a successful landing. However, on the third takeoff, the unthinkable happened. At about 30 feet in the air, the red low-pressure light came on, and the engine started to bark and beg for fuel. I followed through with the items covered on the pre-takeoff briefing, pitched down, immediately switched tanks, retarded the throttle, and then landed straight ahead. We cleared the runway, assessed the situation, and decided to return to the hangar. And when we fueled the airplane, it took 25 gallons in the rear tank. The question is, what happened to the fuel? Was there a broken fuel line? A bad fuel pump? An open sump? There was some speculation that the fuel gauge had failed. It's a mechanical flow gauge over electrical. They almost never fail. It was removed and checked and it worked as advertised. Did I misread the fuel gauge? In my own mind, I did not. But the question lingers. What happened? Was there a chain of events that caused this? Was the rear tank not filled completely after the last flight? It can spit fuel back at you if you try to fill it quickly. Is this what happened? It would be good to know for sure. No one has the answer, just that there was not enough fuel for 3 landings and takeoffs. Did Murphy rear his ugly head and test my skills? I know one thing. I'm going to be sure that there is fuel in the filler necks of each tank prior to flying the Beaver, and I'm going to double check the fuel gauge for the proper indication, full of fuel. The airplane was not damaged in any way, just my pride. Due to my training, I was able to react to the emergency as I should have, and I am thankful for that. I never thought that something like this would happen to me, but it did. And if I became lax because the airplane was always full of fuel, I'm going to be very positive in the future. That sums it up. Don't take anything for granted. Double check yourself and fly as you are trained.